a sample or something, because I find the shared DNA just makes for a tighter phase kind of response, and it also kind of it gives the identity of it keeps the identity.
It's a
of
sonic
the kit.
signature of the band and that record.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's really badass. That's really cool that you're doing that. And man, just like people listening to the show, just think about how deep you can get with this stuff. Like you could just and then you know, you could repurpose it also later down the line for if you're working on a project where it fits, or if it's similar kind of, it could be that you're using the same kind of kit maybe for another band. And I don't know if that happens, but
yeah,
then you've already done some of the work.
Yeah, well, it actually it does work like that, and I've found that as I've refined my drum sounds and the drums I use, and as I'm lucky enough to be working from a really good sounding drum room, I can mix and match like that. I mean, the last 3 or 4 sessions I did, I maxed out the desk and was like, oh, I would have liked to maybe put a hallway mic up or some type of ambient mic or something, and because the tuning scheme was the same and a lot of the drums and kits I use were the same, I can just kind of reach into my collection of samples from a previous session and throw that in there, and it's all coherent because I generally check my tunings very thoroughly with a tune bot, and in between every take, and it affords me these really cool methods of maybe bringing in a hallway mic sample that's multi-sampled from a previous session into a new session, and it has complete coherency and adds ambience and stuff where I was otherwise unable to capture it.
Right. I mean, I'm assuming that's only for like one shots, right? Of like a snare or whatever.
Oh no, I'll do complete multi-samples of every mic, like rooms, hallways, overheads, my Blue Line rooms.
But I'm saying for like if you're adding like a hallway sample that you couldn't record on the desk and you're bringing in the sample, it's going to be for like the hits, not for like the cymbals.
Oh yes, exactly. Yeah, generally it's just for the shells. Yeah, for sure, definitely.
Dude, wild! It's crazy how deep you can go, and also I'm thinking about talking to Mike Pepe out of LA, who works with a lot of like I guess like pop punk, indie rock stuff, and he's so detailed with like his guitar recording in very similar way of like just like I'll have 4 guitar mics on a cab, and we'll blend them like such, and we'll like it's just like you could go the ability to go deep is endless, and like I guess you got to choose what's right for you and how deep you want to go, right? Like
you
don't always have to do that. That's not necessarily always necessary, but like it's definitely enabling you to like do your thing, which is unique to you and the way you work with bands. And I think that's awesome. Like I admire that.
And you're correct. It's not appropriate for all applications, but a big part of the process is just working out when those very detailed ways of working are necessary and when they're not, and just applying them when they are, and taking a different route when they're not.
Absolutely. I'm debating if we should go straight to the Sauce segment, because I want to ask you about doing metal vocals, and they have these crazy tones and stuff, and I feel like the Sauce segment is a good example of that. So maybe we could jump into it and take it from there. What do you think?
No problems. That would be great.
So you sent me a track called Wings of Thanatos by, the band is Wings of Thanatos, and the song is called Ethos, right?
Yes, that's the one.
Awesome. So let's have a listen to that for about 90 seconds, and we'll talk a little bit about what went into that, and we'll get deep on some of the processes you used in that. Sound cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack, sounds awesome. Super heavy, super intense. Obviously, the drums sound amazing. Like I love the snare drum, and the vocal. Like, tell me what happened there, and maybe that could be like a good example of like, I don't know, crazy shit that happens in heavy vocal sessions and processing.
Right. Yeah, I actually have come to really enjoy the vocal process over the years. It was never my favorite part of doing a record, but I've really warmed to it and really enjoy it these days. But for that particular band, the vocals are split up between the drummer and the lead singer. They have very similar kind of timbres of voice, so at times it's kind of hard to know whether it's Screaming Man A or Screaming Man B. Mm-hmm. But they're both really talented vocalists. So doing that kind of harsh metal vocal is a lot about just what the vocalist can do with their voice in the first place. Like most things, like not to be repetitive, but like the source is really important. And there's nowhere to really hide with that type of vocals. Of course, there's compression and saturation and stuff, but if someone's not projecting or someone doesn't have great technique, there's really no way around achieving that sound, so to speak. The sound of the voice is the sound of the voice.
Right. You can't synthesize somebody's voice. That's literally the instrument, right? How
exactly
your vocal tone.
And we're pretty lucky that the vocalists from Wings of Thanatos are just great. They make the noise and it sounds like what you want to hear. So from there, it's just, I mean, I've got a vocal chain set up that just stays permanently patched in. And that usually is an SM7B, which is, like pretty common for heavy vocals. And I also love it on someone with a particularly high register of melodic vocals too. I feel like the kind of darkness and like less complexity of the mic kind of lends itself to some of the more shrill voices. But for the heavy stuff, it's usually the SM7B, and I'll set a vocalist up how they're comfortable. If they're comfortable holding the mic, then you can get away with it as long as they stay fairly consistent with where they hold it. Or I'll just set them up on a stand with a pop filter. But getting a decent amount of proximity is usually part of the scenario with that type of
getting vocal. Like right up on the mic.
Getting right up on the mic, exactly. Yeah. And kind of having that very burly kind of ever-present kind of perceived low end there. And from the SM7B, it's usually going into my API 512 preamp. I'm not compressing on the way in terms of hardware. I'm usually monitoring with some pretty heavy compression on the software side of things. So like I have a vocal template that's got very heavy saturation, compression, limiting going on, so the vocalist can hear themselves with that applied in real time, and we're not committing to anything. And yeah, just keep it really simple. From there, we generally will focus on doing a line or two at a time so we can disperse the greatest amount of breath to each line.
Something I found working with heavy vocalists also is like getting the right breath. It's not an issue as much with pop vocalists because, usually the song has more space to kind of breathe. But with metal and heavy music, you just need it to, that seems to be an issue. So I'm happy to hear that I'm not the only one that's dealt with that. So that's cool.
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, I might come get some pretty ambitious vocalists in that, you'll hit record and they'll try to do half the song in one hit. And from there, I'll kind of bring them back down and go, I think like we lost a bit of steam here and perhaps we could break this up line by line. And if they've worked with me before, they kind of know the speed. But if not, maybe we'll just ease into that and go, oh, that's great. But maybe let's come back and look at this. And by the time you know it, we're doing line by line and even half a line at a time, just whatever you can do to kind of get the most impact in terms of dispersing that breath. And I'll generally, any vocals that are straight down the center with the kind of screaming stuff are doubled. So there's never a single take vocal going on at any one time. If it's straight down the center, it's 2 vocals doubled right down the center. And then for choruses and the occasional like a highlight or kind of line I want to jump out of the stereo field, we'll do a left and right double, sometimes a left and right quad. So there's quite a bit of layering going in. And then once the performances are all tight and everything's kind of there, I'll generally de-breath the vocals. The de-breathing thing is some people like to keep a lot of breath. Some people like to kill the breath. I've always just generally killed the breaths in general, unless it's something a little bit more on the indie or pop side of things, or unless it's something, like a nu metal build-up performance or something where the breath can add to the performance of it.
Right.
I'll generally just kind of kill the breaths in between words, and then I'll use a plugin called Vocaline to snap the performances together and make sure everything is absolutely dead tight. Yeah, and just making sure those S's and T's occur at the same point, and make sure it's as tight as it can get. And then from there, I'll probably run it back through a bit of outboard compression, just to, because I've never really been able to get all of the way there with just software compression. I like to kind of get it standing still with like an 1176 or a distressor on the way in, so to speak, even though I'm essentially reamping it. And then from there in the box, I might add a little bit of extra compression just to kind of tame any overs or stuff like that, or get it sitting where I want.
Why do you think you need the hardware unit to get it where you want it, as opposed to like the software?
It just kind of it just sounds a little bit more aggressive to me, depending on the unit you're using. I mean, there are some occasions where hardware compression just isn't an option, and I'll go complete software, so I don't think it's impossible at all. But to me, I mean, like, coming from a background of using only software, using hardware and like outboard and stuff for the first time was a big revelation to me. Like, it just kind of what I was not able to get. And, a lot of this might be user error. Maybe it was me not really having my head around the plugin or knowing what I was going for at the time. But trying to achieve the same thing with outboard just seemed to get me there a little bit quicker. And
yeah,
I mean, these days, if I am going to be using a software compressor, like, I really love that Purple Audio 1176, and the Slate Distressor is pretty cool. And
that's a go-to for me. Yeah.
I love that one. It's awesome.
I mostly use it on drums, actually. I love it on kicks and snares. It's so good.
It's all over my drum bus for sure.
Right,
for
sure.
I'll absolutely,
and on my drum bus in parallel. Yeah.
Yeah. It's on my drum bus and my kick and snares and everything. Yeah. It's definitely the Swiss Army knife of compressors. But
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, just generally, I mean, if I am using a software compressor, I might kind of bounce in place once I've got the settings I like. It might just be an obsessive compulsive thing, but I just kind of like seeing the waveform, looking like a piece of duct tape and not moving. Yeah.
No, I get it. There's something about like the reason why I mix in a separate session than in the production session is because I want to see those waveforms and know that I know what I'm working with when I'm like getting the plugins going and the template and whatever.